No, I think it's the wrong approach. I think we need to grow the economy to pay for what we want to do. And the point that was made at the beginning by you, Andrew, was that we are at a 40-year high in tax of receipts by the government proportionate to GDP. And this country seems to have a limit on the amount of tax it is willing to pay. The highest figure from the 1950s is 41.9% in 1969-70, and we are heading back towards those levels. We're 37% forecast, possibly going to 38%, and we've got to grow the economy, and that means, particularly in the context of Brexit, taking decisions that are pro-business, help business compete, and make us more efficient.
But the government's planning to add $6 billion to health spending next year, and another 6 on top of that the year after. That's 12 billion in 2 years. And it says it will have to increase taxes.
Well, I think that's wrong, because I think if you increase
taxes,
taxes,
what it's going to do.
I think if you increase taxes, you will actually stop economic growth. It will reduce economic growth. What has been happening recently is that tax revenues have been coming in well ahead of expectations. The deficit was £6 billion lower than the OBR forecast in March for a year end of the 31st of March. It's been quite surprising how quickly it's shifted. So we shouldn't get too hung up about how much you can get of relatively small amounts proportionate to total government spending. That £6 billion is less than 1% of government expenditure.
I think you would sit in a BBC studio and hear a Tory outline about 6 taxes he wants to increase.
Well, I'm not enthusiastic for the plan. I'm very concerned about capital taxation, because I think capital taxation leads to the inefficient allocation of money and has very damaging economic consequences, and that what you actually want is to have as free capital transactions as possible so that people reallocate. The problem with capital taxations is that you either create an incentive not to carry out a transaction, or you create transactions at the wrong time, and it's economically going to create less growth.
Why are the Tories so readily dismissing the concerns of business?
Well, they're dismissing the concerns of the CBI, and the CBI has got everything wrong in the whole of its history.
Well, and Airbus and BMW,
BMW
and other major manufacturers.
BMW has a particular axe to grind. BMW finds that the UK is one of, if not its most profitable market to sell into. It's much more worried about free customs coming in to sell its goods.
So you're dismissing its concerns?
The concerns of business that I'm worried about are, do we have a highly competitive, free and open market? And Brexit gives us a real opportunity to do this, to set out the conditions where business can flourish by having the UK as a low-tax, sensible regulation economy. And that's the pro-business agenda.
But your government's about to agree to continued free movement of goods, in which the price it will pay is continued regulatory alignment. That's where your government is going.
That would be an idiotic thing to do.
That's where it's going.
Right. The Prime Minister said we'd be out of the single market and out of the customs union, and we must stick to that, because the advantages we get are from making the UK a genuinely free market, which the EU is not. The EU is a failing economic model. Look at what's going on in the conference now, the troubles it's got on migration, the failures of the euro, the €1 trillion that Germany has lent to pretty much bankrupt EU states. They're in such trouble.
We're heading into July, and we still don't know what your government's policy is on some of the most fundamental Brexit issues.
I think we know much more than you're suggesting, and the legislation is in place for us to leave, which is crucial. So now the current situation is that we will leave on the 29th of March under UK law and under EU law if there is no further agreement.
But we don't know what the customs arrangement will be?
We know from the Prime Minister what she is aiming for. We know this from the Lancaster House speech, from Florence, from
But these are just aspirations.
They're quite clear. I don't think any of the red lines have gone. And we have
no vast divorce bill. There is going to be one.
No transition period.
No transition period.
No, there's not going to be ECJ jurisdiction once we've left.
In relation to the rights of EU citizens.
That's going to last for a defined period.
But that will continue after we leave.
That wasn't a red line, and that is only called for if British courts are.